Hey friends, Jen here with Serenity Hill Farmstead. Today I want to talk to you about elderberry. Now it's coming up on cold and flu season, the time of year where people are starting to reach for their elderberries and start making syrups. And I've seen a lot of people done gummies. We've tried that before ourselves. But today I want to share with you 3 different ways that you can use elderberry that does not require making syrup. So elderberry has gained a lot of popularity in the last handful of years, especially when it comes to boosting your immunity. But elder has a lot of extra properties that you may not be familiar with. Now, elderberry and elderflower, you know the berry comes from the flower. First, the flower blooms and it turns into these big, white, beautiful, and they smell amazing flower heads. And then eventually they turn into the berry. Well, the flower and the berry, while they share a lot of the same properties and a lot of similarities, they actually do have some differences. And there are some precautions that you need to take with both the berries and the flowers that we'll get into. Even though they do have a lot of similarities, they come from the same plant and the berries come from the flowers, they do have some differences and they can be used for some different things. So the flowers and berries both have antiviral properties, but the flowers have anti-inflammatory properties. They're really good for inducing perspiration from people that have a hard time sweating. And they're actually really good to use for seasonal allergies. This is one of the main ingredients that we use in our seasonal tea. Now, even though the flowers do have some antiviral properties, elderberry is really the one that shines in this department. Now, this one is majorly antiviral. It's packed full of antioxidants and things to help knock down the life expectancy and the viral load in a lot of different kinds of viral strains. And now we got to talk about the things that you need to watch out for. So with elderberries and elderflower, there is a toxin that is in these berries that, to keep it really simple, it's like a cyanide toxin. So you need to prepare these before you consume them. You don't want to just pick them off the vine and put them in your mouth. That would not be good. You wouldn't feel too hot. And the more you consume of them, the worse your symptoms will get. But it's a very simple process to take care of that toxin so that it's not going to affect you. And that is dehydrate it, tincture it, or boil it. Now, if you're going to boil it, which is the common way to make an elderberry tea, you want to boil it for at least 3 minutes. I have a different way of making elderberry syrup, and if you are interested in getting that recipe and reading about that process, there is a link down in the description box below, and that'll take you over to the website and you can read all about that. But today we are not talking about syrup. But before we get into the things that we are talking about, I want to talk about the warnings with elderberry and elderflower. Now, elderberry is actually something that I myself cannot take. Having an autoimmune disease, elderberry is absolutely off limits. Now, it doesn't matter what your autoimmune disease is. If you have any kind of autoimmune disease, I highly recommend staying away from any kind of immune stimulating herbs like elderberry. But elderberry specifically stimulates the pro-inflammatory cytokines that are in your immune system. Now, we've all heard about cytokines during the whole COVID thing. Cytokines got a bad rap, but let me tell you, you have many different types of cytokines and they're all very necessary. Cytokines are not bad. Cytokines are the messengers in your immune system. They're the ones that say, hey, you need to go here to fight this, or hey, you need to go there to fight that. And like I said, there are many different types of cytokines. Elderberry specifically works in the cytokines that are kind of already going nuts in those that have autoimmune disease, specifically those with autoimmune arthritis. Now, if you don't have autoimmune arthritis, say you have Hashimoto's or type 1 diabetes, this can still negatively impact you. So if you decide to use elderberry in any way to consume it, please make sure you do your research and you are very, very careful, because the last thing you want to do is ramp up your autoimmune disease. That would just be a bad day. I know I would be absolutely miserable. So now that we've got that out of the way, there are 3 different ways, not syrup, that I'm going to show you that my family uses elderberry that we prefer way over syrup. We really don't like elderberry syrup. When I was taking it, before I knew about my autoimmune disease and how it was affecting me, I used to take it as a syrup, but it was a little different. And like I said, that recipe and how to do it is in the description box below. You can go click over there and take a look at that. But over the years, we have discovered that there are 3 different ways that are way better for us and maybe you want to try them. They're super, super simple. So the first way I'm going to talk about, and I'm not going to make them all today because this is all the dried elderberry that I have left, and I'm going to save that for one concoction here that I'm going to make here on camera with you guys, but I'm going to talk about the other ones. So the first one is elderberry tincture, and I only make single herb tinctures. I don't make multi-herb tinctures to keep on the shelf as kind of a blanket. There's many, many reasons for that. We can talk about that in another video, but single herbs only for me. And how we do that is pretty much like any other tincture. You take a certain amount of berry and you take a certain amount of vodka, you mix them together. Now, because we are using, if we were using this dried herb, you can use fresh. In fact, it is better to use fresh when you are making a tincture. Then we would pretty much fill it up and then fill the vodka up all the way, making sure the berries are fully submerged all the way to the tippy top. Shake it up, put it on a dark shelf. You know the drill. If you are using dried, then you use half the amount. Dried herb is more potent than fresh herb, so you need less the amount. It's literally just taken the moisture out and compressed all of that medicinal goodness down into a smaller volume. So you need less amount. So you would need half the amount. So here, actually, we would do about that amount, and then we would fill it up with vodka. And let it sit. So because this is a berry, I would let this sit for 8 weeks because it's a little more dense and it needs to sit for a longer period of time to get all of the medicinal properties out. Now, this year I have noticed when we just did our first round of elderberry harvest yesterday, and I have noticed that the elderberries are significantly smaller this year than they have been in other years, and that, I'm gonna guess, is because we had the worst drought ever. If you have a drought early on in the season, your elderberries are going to be significantly smaller. It doesn't mean that it's going to be it's not like it's going to be a bad crop. That doesn't mean that your medicinal potency is necessarily going to struggle, but it does mean that you will have significantly less berries, so you will have to harvest more to get the same amount that you're looking for. But when you are harvesting your elderberry, you want to make sure that you are harvesting berries that are not green, that are not light purple, or really even medium purple. They need to look almost black. They need to be so dark purple that they look black. And the reason for that is because, remember those toxins that we talked about? To basically keep it real simple, the lighter the berry, the higher that concentrated toxin is. So you want to make sure that they are super, super dark. Now the challenge in that is getting to them before the birds do. So what I do is when it's about 80% or so black, dark purple, that's when I harvest. And those green ones, they just don't get used. We can go ahead and compost them pretty much. That's all we can really do with them. So this is what I have left from last year's harvest. You can see, I'll take some out, and you can see how dark they are. I went through and really hand-picked all of the lighter ones out, any kind of sticks or twigs. I harvested all of that out. And then we dried them. Now, a little trick. When you are harvesting elderberry, just stick the whole thing in a bag in a freezer, and then they will harden up in 24 hours, and then you just take the bag and bang it on the table. All of the berries come off all of the stems. You can discard the stems, and then you can sort through your frozen berries way easier because these little suckers will mash up really, really easily if they are fresh, or say old. You definitely want to make sure they're frozen to make it easier to handle. And then from there, you can dehydrate them. Definitely separate the bad ones or the underripe ones out from the ripe ones before you dehydrate, because it is way harder to tell which ones were ripe and which ones weren't ripe when they're dry. So nice little tip for you there. Okay, so that is the tincture. Now the second part would be to make an elderberry tea. Elderberry tea is delicious, and I really wish that I could still have it because it is really tasty. So you could make an immune boost tea with this. And how we do that is to blend it with different herbs that are complementing both in properties and in flavor. And one of the recipes that I use, our immune boost recipe, has elderberry, also has nettle, it has ginger, it has echinacea, it has rose hips. Yeah, that's it. So those herbs all together here, they all complement each other. There's, the elderberry and the echinacea are immune boosting herbs. And then the other ones, they're anti-inflammatory. They give a good dose of vitamin C. They all complement each other, and they're all helpful in trying to get over any kind of viral illness that you may be dealing with, or just to help boost your immune system. Now, the third thing we're going to talk about today is making an oxymel, and I'm going to do that with you right now. So what an oxymel is literally means acid, or apple cider vinegar, and honey. And I've got raw unfiltered honey. I have to use this up. I've got a whole 5-gallon bucket full of raw honey over here next to me, but we need to use this one up. So we're going to use this one today. It's just raw honey. I got this one from Costco, and this is raw apple cider vinegar that I got from Azure. So what we're gonna do, make sure the mother is good and mixed in your apple cider vinegar. Give it a good shake. And we've got, here's the recipe for this. We're gonna use about a quarter of the jar. So 1, 2, 3, 4, that's about a quarter. And we are gonna use 1 part of honey and 1 part apple cider vinegar. It is really that simple. So I am going to go ahead and do the apple cider vinegar first. Woo, and it's already turning colors. I love making things with elderberry because it's so beautiful. I love the color. And making the tincture is probably my favorite because it is so beautiful. It just turns this absolutely gorgeous color of purple. We're gonna be here a while. You know, the easier way to do this would be to take the top off and pour it in. There we go. Now that we're thinking about things. And there it is. And because I'm using a vinegar before I put the top on this, I'm gonna put a piece of parchment here because vinegar on these lids will rust these lids. So you wanna make sure that you have a cover here. Honey. Okay. So make sure you have a cover and you put that on there, and then you just give it a shake and you treat it the same way you do as a tincture. It's going to sit on the shelf for a couple weeks, and you're going to make sure you're shaking this daily to really incorporate everything, and then you're going to strain it. And how you can take an oxymel is you can mix it into drinks. My son loves to have oxymels in seltzer. He just doesn't know that he has oxymels in seltzer, but he's like, that syrup is really good in this. So that's one way you could do it. You could also make it as a base into a lemonade. You could just have it straight. You could just have a tablespoon of it. There's a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different recipes out there. If you want more recipes, and if you want the recipes for the teas that I mentioned and many more of them and tincture recipes, I have an herbal recipe book that will be coming out the first or second week of September, just depending on when everything gets finalized and nailed down and launched on the website. So if you are interested in getting a copy of that, make sure you hit the description box down below, and there is a link to the website where you can get put on the email list. I don't spam you, I promise, just occasional emails. And you can get notified when that goes out. It is going to have 50 different herbal recipes. We're gonna have tinctures, teas, oxymels, salves, and oils in there. So 5 different things that you can do with your herbs, how to use them, the dosages, we talk about storage, we talk about all sorts of different things in there. It's gonna be an awesome book, so make sure you check that out. Look at that. The honey settled to the bottom, of course. And you can just see the different layers of the oxymel here. It's super cool. Love it. I love this stuff. Okay. So those are my 3 favorite ways to use elderberry. If you do any of them, let me know what you prefer. Do you prefer the syrup or do you prefer one of these? If you haven't yet subscribed yet, I want to invite you to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you can stay up to date with everything we put out, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.